preview. Alright, okay. I think this is functioning. I think. God, that was a headache. Right. Okay. Still very much getting used to YouTube, but I think I have got it functioning. Alongside a few other changes from how the previous streams have gone. Obviously, we've migrated from Twitch over to YouTube. You might notice that the image is currently very different, and XSplit is giving me some hassle. Give me a moment. Just want to make sure the windows are the correct size on my screen. There we go. So, let me actually get some lights on. There we go, there's one. The focus almost had it right there without me having to do anything. And I put my phone down, which is over there. So, the fact that I've just stated that I'm not using my phone should give you a clue as to our goings on. I upgraded the camera. We are no longer using my phone's webcam. We are now currently using, I believe it's a Logitech C922. I figured, fuck it, let's upgrade and have a nice camera. So, that also means I no longer have a tripod between my legs. So I can actually get right up to the desk and all sorts of fun stuff. So, speaking of, let us just quickly adjust the camera to a position that works for us. There we go. And of course, our subject for today, if it would like to focus. I feel like this is going to be an ongoing issue. Is going to be this little guy. There we go. We got there. Autofocus. You love it. I wish I could control it. Yeah, it is going to be, as you can see in the bottom corner there, one of my little Lamenters that I usually, well, as I have for my personal army. I don't have any photos prepared to show you my typical goings on with the army. But here we are. So, bottom right corner, you can see this is what we are currently generally aiming for. Yellow armor, white is XSplit lighting up on my taskbar. So yellow armor, and then as well, as you can see on the shoulder pad, it is the nightmare of the livery that the Lamenters have, which is black and white field, checkered, with a love heart. I might just adjust the camera here, let's bring it lower down, because I am still getting used to this. This webcam actually came with a teeny tiny tripod, hence the no more leg tripod. That actually makes it a bit easier to focus because it's not trying to look at behind, because there's less behind. Also, yeah, I did take a couple weeks break there for a couple of reasons. One, it's just sort of like a mental health thing. I was just having a little bit of a rough time, and second, I had a little bit of a workplace incident, so I just wanted to let that heal. Currently scabbing. Currently still probably a little too gross for YouTube. Let me just check if things be functioning. Just gonna make sure of a couple of things. So, currently just watching the stream on my phone as well. I can't tell what the delay like is there, but there certainly is one. Just had someone asking for the link on Twitter, so let me just see if I can't at them. There we go. And let me just see if people who I have been told are viewing are getting a good screen, because between new camera and migrating to YouTube, it's all up in the air, like how things are running. Might have the stream run a little longer, partially to make up for the slight delay, partially to make up for who's it with technical tinkerings. Let me just tinker with that as well. And hope, yeah, if I just do that, it autofocuses on it. Brilliant. I just need enough in the foreground. Can't see anything. Hello, what? Hold on. Let's make sure people can actually... Yeah, that's the right URL. See anything. Do I need to do this? Is this what I need to do? Oh yeah, John is here. John's on the right stream. It is too warm. Yeah, everywhere, not just the US, seems to be having a little bit of a heat wave right now. Which, frankly, is a little, whew, little spicy. A little spicy. Let me just see if you were to just go to my channel, does it show up? Apparently I've got 3 people watching. John sees, he hears, he also melts. That's good. So, it works for John. Oh, right, apparently if this isn't the scheduled... Granted, I was a little late, which would explain why it isn't a scheduled event, but it's giving me the same URL. Also, I'm very quiet. Hold on. Yeah, I might have to tinker with my microphone settings then. We're definitely going to do a slightly extended stream just because of all this. It helps. I just searched your name in YouTube. I mean, that makes sense. Oh. Just a moment. There's a small animal coming in. Volume range. Let's up the volume range to 150 instead of 125%. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if this blasts out anyone's eardrums. Having to have the door open due to the current temperature all surviving in, and that means dog sees an open door, dog wants to come in. Right, okay. Anyway, we're bloody 10 minutes into this, and I've not even, like, put any goo near anything. I've not even picked up a paintbrush, and that's the easiest part for these guys. So, like I say, got this guy here. Can we see the small animal? The small animal has been abducted by the primary owner and has now been put somewhere where it can be looked at. Just currently trying to get this camera to focus on the model. Seems to be that autofocus will be the bane of my existence. Hello, yes, I would like for you. Let me get this out of the background to focus on this. Yes, there we go. Now I might actually be able to talk about it because you can bloody see it. Yeah, so this guy, anyone who has been paying attention might have noticed this is the third iteration of the backpack for this guy. First one had that weird large winged skull. Second one had like the big flag. Got rid of the big flag. Well, I put on the big flag because I thought it looked impressive. Got rid of the big flag because the flag was going in this direction, but the scroll on his waist is going in that direction. So that bugged the hell out of me. So I just used. I couldn't find the old backpack, otherwise I would have used that. So I just grabbed another one and stuck on this little winged skull on instead. And here we are with his third backpack. I should have probably just magnetized him at this point. So I am going to be doing this guy as a veteran for my army. So on top of the yellow color scheme we've got here in the corner, he is also going to be getting a couple of markings on his helmet. And I believe I'm doing this guy as the sergeant for my company veterans. So that means he's going to get a black stripe down the middle of his helmet with some small red stripes either side. That's just my personal markings for that sort of rank. Other than that, let us actually finally get started. So, I have all the colours I believe I should need for this guy. Let me actually screw the top off of my water can as well. And our first paint is going to be Avalon Sunset. Now, with the guy we've got on the bottom, he is actually quite a bright and palish yellow, but I kind of like my guys being a little bit more saturated. I shade a lot of oranges and a little bit of browns, just because I prefer how it looks. If I try to do that pale yellow, it would make this a million times harder to paint. I can tell you that. Let me just retrieve my brush soap because I will need that throughout some point this evening. And let me move this light so it's not blocking my laptop screen. There we go. That's actually a bit better lighting-wise too. So let's just get started. So I've got the Avalon. I actually don't mind the wet palette being blurry in the background. That's you're not really missing much. And I am using a small brush. I probably shouldn't actually, because otherwise this make the model yellow stage is going to take absolutely ages. So let's switch to this. Big and flat. Thin down on the palette. Should go on probably in a couple of coats. Let me just get used to leaning over with this webcam in the way, and we're just going to get started. So, how do I begin talking now that we're actually putting some paint on here? Like I say, this guy is going to be a model in my own personal army. For anyone who does know me personally, my Lamenters, which are the Space Marine chapter. Hold on, my light is getting in the way of my paintbrush. High CPU usage. Yeah, well, I'm first time streaming in 1080. Of course there's going to be high CPU usage. So I'm going to be painting this guy up the same way I paint up the rest of my army, which, granted, is a little bit of a weird technique for me. Well, not for me, but in terms of what others do. Oh, do you need what I handed? Where did I put the paint pot? Without getting it all over my lamp. Thankfully, these are Where did I put it? This is off to a great start tonight. You put down a paint pot and you immediately lose it. It's all the way over there. I don't know why I put it there. All the way over on the edge of my desk. So let us just plop on some more. That's probably way more than we need, but to be fair, it's a warm sunny day, so the more paint the slower to dry. Apparently we're due well, I say we're in the middle of a heat wave right now. See, it's already drying up on his leg. If the camera would like to focus. Don't do this, there we go. It's already starting to dry, that first coat. Thankfully these are just block acrylic paints, so I don't have to worry too much about being too accurate, and I am actually not going to care too much about where this ends up on him. Like I say, so just going to be painting this guy up like I would the rest of my normal army, which right now is just make him yellow. Get this light somewhere. It's not going to get constantly battered by my paintbrush. Like that. Why do these have such long handles? Hold on. Sorted. I just had to break it off is all. There we go, there we go, there we go. I can actually angle this all sorts of ways without getting the butt of the paintbrush tapping against my light. Oh, this is going to be brilliant on playback, isn't it? So this is probably, yeah, the most boring stage. It's just make the guy yellow. Let me just check, make sure some things are working. Yeah. That's all functioning. Calm down, it's just a brush. Hey look, it was necessary. These are cheap paintbrushes. I got them from Hobbycraft for like a tenner, and it's a whole pack of them. Like I say, just slapping this on everything, because pretty much most of the model is going to be yellow. Just making sure I get in all the nooks and crannies, because I don't want my wash to go over white, because it would just make it look really out of place. To be fair, I probably am due getting some nicer brushes rather than these cheap ones, but if I get a nice brush, it is going to get battered to hell and back, which would not be good for them. It's like the opposite of that shoe quandary. I think it was from a Discworld book where like, oh, a rich person can get like really nice shoes that they rarely ever need to replace, but you know, a poor person needs to get new shoes every couple of months because they just fall apart on him because they're cheap. But with paintbrushes, it's like I want to be able to, you know, use my brushes up, because brushes do not get more durable as they get more expensive. Also, autofocus. How do I deal with thee? Is it because of the reflectiveness? How do I deal with this? Hold on a sec. How about if we go absolutely to the floor? Hold on. Let me get that paintbrush out of my mouth. God, Sam Vine said it. Thank you. I literally have The Color of Magic on my bed because I want to start reading Discworld. So I'm going to be using a family holiday I have in September as an opportunity. I read the prologue, but the prologue is like half a page long, so that doesn't mean much. There we go. That actually looks pretty alright. There's loads of tiny bits of Discworld that I do know of. Partially because I think it was Sky that did those adaptations years ago. I think they did Hogfather and something to do with Postman. That's how I found out about it, at least. I absolutely adored that Hogfather special. I was like, I don't know. Granted, I just really like the imagery, like that juxtaposition of, oh, it's the Grim Reaper, but he's trying to be Santa. I didn't expect Colour of Magic and Light Fantastic to be. Don't expect them to be like the rest. First couple of books are a bit meh. Well, yeah, that is going to be expected, I suppose, because it's like, you know, it was the first bits of that world. They probably will be a little meh, but I absolutely adore Good Omens. Read that a little bit ago. I watched some of the Amazon series, but I don't have Amazon Prime, so the person I was mooching off of, I just stopped using their account for one reason or another. But absolutely adored that book. So I know it's not going postal. That was the first one. Yeah, that was the post book one. Yeah. But so I know it's not going to be down to like, oh, this is rubbish. They must all be like this. No, I know what Pratchett, granted with Neil Gaiman, can write like. I know it can be really good. So it's just getting through that bit of, oh, okay, it's the first one. He's still figuring things out himself. I think that book was first published like back in the 80s. But it's going to be an experience. This, like I say, Discworld, one of those things I always wanted to get into. But I'm going to see if I can't make the time to read, even if I have to bloody take books into work and read them on my break instead of looking at, like, social media. If anything, that'll probably be a bit healthier. There's going to be a season 2 of Good Omens. Did hear about that one. Apparently it does have Gaiman's blessing. So, originally it was a bit deep to that, but after that it's like, right, okay. Even if it isn't, like, canon, whatever. Like, I think I've said before, canon is just one of those sacred cows we need to kill. It's still going to be, like... I wouldn't be surprised if he helps advise on it, to make sure it sort of, like, feels right. And, you know... To say that Gaiman is competent feels like an understatement in a lot of ways. Right, but we got him yellow. It's surprisingly still wet, considering the temperature right now. So I'm thinking. Because our next step, for the yellow at least, would be slapping this all over him, basically, which is a yellow contrast paint, going from Avaland to Iandan yellow. I believe that's one Eldar name to another. No, it isn't. Avaland is an Empire thing from fantasy. They came with an outline for a second book when Sir Terry was still kicking, so hopefully it'll be the same. Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they're using. If they dug that up and said, I mean, this exists. It's weird. It is like one of those stories that didn't really demand a sequel. So I don't know if it's like something else on a biblical scale is happening that needs sorting out, or if it's like a continuation with the same characters just dealing with other things. Because it's not exactly a story that, like say with a lot of things, it's like, oh, we got to keep upping the stakes, we got to keep upping the stakes. That's not why people are here for this story. They're not here for high stakes, they're here for one, the humour, and going by what Twitter is like, the practically confirmed romance between oh bloody hell, I forgot their names. The two main characters, I have forgotten the names. Azrael is the angel. I mostly remember that one because I really struggled pronouncing it in my head when I was reading the book. And I forgot David Tennant's character's name. I'm sure either John will know. My bandwidth is probably being eaten a bit too much right now for me to use my phone to check it out. Hey, this actually is starting to dry, but before we get onto that, I am actually... there's a couple bits I'm missing. I'm just going to make sure I've got everywhere that I want to be yellow. Actually yellow. It doesn't need to be the most consistent base coat, because like I say, it is going to be covered up by some transparent funny goo momentarily, once I am confident that this is dry and isn't going to mix with it on the model. This might take a little while. Crowley, yes, Crowley and Crowley even, and Azaraphael. They probably pronounce it differently. I really struggle with names like that. I think most people do. Like, using this as an example, I think Abaddon and Belial, also biblical angel and demon names, that are also 40k character names, are names I very much struggled to pronounce throughout my first few years of the hobby. It's like, oh, Abaddon, Belial, Belial. I might have flipped between the two, never actually got corrected. Maybe it's one of those things where there's like no hard and fast rule. I don't know. Either that or someone would have just quoted an audio book as like, okay, sure, fine, as long as I know. So, now that is starting to dry, but I am, whilst I'm waiting for it to entirely dry, going to get some of the white on this guy, which is mostly going to be the field for his shoulder pad, and I believe I might do one of the knee pads. we'll see. We'll see how I feel. This one is going to use a small brush just for the sake of making sure I don't cock it up. And with white, I actually prefer to start off with Ulfwan Grey, because then I can actually highlight it and it'll still look white because it's going to be next to black and yellow. Almost anything would look white next to those two colours. It's a new pot as well because my old one had unfortunately dried up, partially because of these pots, partially because of the current weather. So it needed a quick replacement. So don't need a huge amount, we're only covering a couple of small areas. Let's go. Ooh, I might actually also do the field on the shield as well. So we'll see. Like I say, I might make this a longer stream to make up with for the funkiness, getting things set up and getting people the URL. YouTube is a weird one compared to Twitch, because Twitch is just all like, okay, go. Well, YouTube, I wanted to schedule it just because it's all like, I thought it would keep me to my time that I usually do. Honestly, I might just do the click and go with YouTube as well, because making sure that Twitch, the XSplit even streamed to that web page was a bit of a hassle. But at the same time, it's getting people the URL. Like, you stream on YouTube, it has a video, it has URL like any video on there, while with Twitch, you could just send people to your channel. Also, this paint is coming out very thin. I might need to just give it a quick extra shake just to be sure. I think I just needed to give it an extra shake. There we go. Like I say, brand new pot. Hadn't been used in forever. I'm just going to base the bits I know I'm going to do. So let's get the field on his shield. His little storm shield there. There we go. Yeah, if I have the camera low like this, it doesn't seem to have much issue focusing. So I'll take that. This is also much better than having my old tripod right between my legs, I believe, as I have said a couple of times. This is a lot more comfortable. Let's get a little smidge of water in there. There we go. That's the problem with painting in temperatures like this. And then our winged skull on the shield, I'm probably going to do gold. This scroll, I'm probably going to do bone. Or at least the same colours I would normally do bone. Because, screw it, they don't need to be different colours. Yeah. There we go. Let's get some of this in that gap down there. Just because this outer trim is probably going to be in black. Which means A, doesn't matter if I make it white. B, I want to make sure there's some defined borders. There's white and black next to each other. Like, usually you'd want to use a darker colour to form a border between two like blocks of colour. But when you're using black, how do you form that? So sometimes you got to play a little bit. First coat, so we're going to be a little messy. I'm probably going to get some of the colour I'm going to use, like the Iandin, onto this white, which isn't the end of the world, but I will have to clean it up. But this gives me another colour to put on, so we're not just looking at a yellow blob for who knows how long. Plus, I don't know how long it's going to take for the contrast to dry, especially in this temperature. Could take moments, could take forever. They are not typical paints, is what I will say. Second thin layer on the field. It's warm enough where I can actually already just slap on another coat. One thing I'm very tempted to do if we do get this guy finished on stream is actually share it on Facebook, because that's mostly where these guys get shown off, is on my Facebook page. Like my personal Facebook page, not like a painting page. I did have one, but I deleted that a while ago. It's because I just didn't have the motivation. And I was mostly using it for commissions. So that page being active just told people that I might still be taking commissions, and I not accepted one in over a year just because I'm kind of done with them. I think that's also another discussion I've had Right, that went on a bit quick. Still clearly drying just from how shiny it is. I think this is absorbing a bit of water on the palette, but I wanted to make sure my palette was very damp for today. There we go. Ooh, might have messed up with that surface a little there. There we go. Yeah, it was looking a bit chalky, so I've tore it a little bit there, but that's just me being impatient. So yeah, that's mostly the white. I'm not going to go for perfect coats for them right now. Oop, like I say, just because they're more than likely going to get some of the yellow on them as I ink this guy. Let's just clean up that trim because I see some of the white coming up. Oh, there's a lovely breeze that's come in the moment. I don't get much breeze up here, but when I do, it is cold. I should have grabbed a drink. I might do that later. But for now, I shall suffer for my art, which is painting tiny men. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect. The things getting covered up by our ink are going to hide some of these imperfect lines. You might also be able to hear some of my neighbours. I don't know what's going on. Children are noisy, that's all I can say. Right. Look a little neater. Anything else I want to slap on before we do just go straight to Ayandon? Ugh, my face is damp. Everything else, because like there's a bit of detail in this guy. You might be able to see. The reference doesn't. I was literally about to talk about the abs. Yeah, that reference is literally this little guy down here is literally from an old rule book published by, I believe, Forge World ages ago. It's just a generic guy. As for the function of the abs, they are purely decorational. Lamenters are actually descended from blood angels. That sentence might not make sense to a lot of people, but it does to me. So they sort of carried over a lot of the artisanal feel that the blood angels have, which means a lot of their guys get nipple armor. Look up Sanguinary Guard, and you will see a lot of golden armored angel space marines with defined nipples, shall we say. Used to be a meme. I always actually kind of liked the idea that Space Marines sort of aiming for that sort of Renaissance vibe, as opposed to like some of the others where it's like, oh, these are the Space Catholics and these are the Space Vikings. It's like, yes, these guys do have some of the vampire trappings, but they aren't. So yeah, literally no function. They are just there to be fancy, and this is a company veteran, so he's going to be fancy. And I think the white has dried, so let us give this slop a shot. I say, not like I've already painted thousands, well, not thousands, but gonna have to get used to that. Hold on. Let me adjust this so that there is a leg directly in front of the camera. But yes, the abs are in fact purely decorational. Did I knock? I actually knocked off a bit of the paint on here. It was still curing. Oh, fun. Alright, let me get that fixed quickly. Oh, yes. Stompy has entered the chat. Yeah, let me just get that fixed. You literally probably just missed me cocking up and knocking over my camera. There we go. Fix that mohawk vent. You can actually see the difference in tone between the wet paint and the dry paint on his head. There we go. That's looking better. Looking better. The only downside of actually being able to lean my arms on the desk now whilst I'm streaming painting is I am feeling the edge of my desk on my arms. Right, while we wait for that tiny bit of his head to dry, why don't we actually get some of the contrast on him? What's the best brush? Probably this. I don't need a neat brush. It is yellow goo that's going everywhere. So yeah, literally ironed and yellow. This is how I start off the shading on these guys, which is our yellow warm contrast paint. And I am going to try, maybe not quickly, but I'm going to try and make sure I do this a chunk at a time, just to make sure, not knowing how quickly this is going to dry, we don't get any tide marks. So this is the first stage on me getting that sort of weird look for my guys. Because instead of the usual base coat wash highlight, I go, okay, base coat, cover it all in shit, cover it all in some other areas with a little bit more of other shit, tidy it up, and hope. And so far it's worked. It's given me quite a nice gooey texture. Like I say, I've already managed to get some on our yellow knee pad, so screw it, let's embrace it. When the contrast first came out, I thought, let's just try and use this all together. But as you can see, with the weird surface tension that comes in contrast paint, with the low detail usually that comes with Space Marine armor, it does sort of make some pools and patches. Yeah, it is a nice look. I do like it. The torso, on the other hand, isn't actually a sanguinary guard. It is very much reminiscent. It's from the Blood Angel upgrade sprue. Got one a while ago because I wanted the head and the chalice for some things, and the torso was just a nice bonus. I believe I used some other bits to help make that Librarian Dreadnought that I still need to use in a game. In fact, let's show off the abs. In fact, actually no. If I get too much of this on the abs, it will clog up details slightly. So, in fact, let me bite my tongue there and try and avoid them a little bit. Probably going to get them a little bit still, but the less the better. Is also showing off some of the trim he has on the bottom of, I suppose it's a rib cage. And let us get his back. Camera, focus for me, please. Camera. Yeah, he is going to be shiny and wet for a little while. Camera, focus. Screw it, you're not missing much. It'll probably, yeah, it focused by the time I'd stopped asking it to focus. I should probably just move this over to the actual side that my arm is on, eh? Shiny bone indents. Yeah, it is sort of similar to that. Sort of, I don't know, it's just a fancy trim. I do quite like them putting in, like in terms of like the CAD model, that was probably really easy to do. It's just like, oh, just grab that edge and extrude it a little bit outwards. Like, okay, sure. There we go. It's now a slightly fancier looking marine. But I appreciate it, and it gives us something to work with a little more when we do get to highlighting. Which probably won't be this stream, but we'll get there. Also, I said about doing this a chunk at a time, and there is some chunks that I missed. So we might get a little bit of an edge tied on there, but whatever. We'll just say it was intentional. Can highlight it to make it look like it's a crack in the paintwork or something. And of course, my favourite stage for doing these is just slapping it on the head. Because then we get to see his face a little better for the first time. I say, as it looks horrible and chunky right now, but trust me, it will look good by the time we're done. So it is starting to dry a little bit on his shins there. So hopefully we're not going to be waiting too long. And let's just get around the edge of the shield, just so we have some of the yellow shading showing when we do get edge black. You know what, screw it. I already did it on one bit. Let's just put the whole thing in. We'll clean that up later. And we got a minimal amount on the white. I am getting some on the shoulder pads field here, but that's not a huge deal. Because that is going to get... The white areas are going to get their own contrast colour. Because I like to use the Apothecary White, which is sort of a mid-tony blue-grey. That really helps the white pop a little bit. And then it's just the back of his... what is essentially a bedroll of his power pack. Alright, and I think we should have... I say we didn't get much on the field, but this is why I swear I'm dyspraxic. Let's get some in that elbow, right up there. Not going to show, but it not being there is going to be more obvious than the fact that it is there. Right. I got a little too much in this corner. There we go. Otherwise I would have clogged it up. So yeah, I literally just covered him in goo. He looks messy. We're going to make him less messy eventually. While we are waiting for that to dry though, let's work on some other bits. So I want to just start on the gold. Screw it. So let's get some of our Retributor armor. Let's actually put it on screen. Shaken. Pardon me. And plop that on our palette. Not too much is going to be gold on this guy. Mostly the little decoration on his shoulder pad here, with a little Astartes skull. Maybe, well, probably the same one on his shield, and then this little bit hanging off of his shoulder pad. Yeah, not too much. Have you healed, by the way? The finger is still going. It's still taking a bit. The cut itself is actually scabbed along the edge, but there's that weird bit where like the edge of the cut is, well, I say it's numb. It's probably dead. So once it's healed, it'll come away, and it's still a little tender if I poke at it. I just needed to replace the dressing I put on it because, frankly, starting to smell like a belly button. So, took it off, gave it a good sanitize, a gentle wash, because I don't want to risk the scab getting too soft. But yeah, it's getting there. I still have the feeling in my finger. It's still there. It didn't need any stitches. It's all good. Just me making a whoopsie daisy. And I am learning the hard way. That was also honestly part of why I did take this little break. One, to let that heal, and two, just like, I was just in a mood. It was just like, I don't want to deal with things right now. So I'm just not going to. Because work has been a little hectic. Not because we've been busy, but apparently something that's happening everywhere, where a lot of staff members are having to isolate. The dressing looks less extreme. Yeah, I literally took the entire dressing off they gave me at the walk-in centre, and I've just replaced it with plaster. It's working. It's working for now. Still a little tender, so I am minimising the use of that finger. I've only just grown the tip of my finger back after I potato peeled it off. Ooh. Ow, yeah, no, that one does sound a bit horrible. Mine was just a knife. Let me just pick up some of the contrast. It's settling a little too much in some of the corners on this shield. Yeah. Well, I suppose that's something that happens. You cook for long enough, you're gonna accidentally hurt yourself. I feel sorry for the supervisor that was with me that morning, because she was panicking more than I was about it. It's like, it's my finger. Why are you the one hyperventilating? Please stop. Hey, granted, some people just aren't good with blood, which I can relate to. I'm fine with my own blood, it seems, but it is other people's that I start going at. But hey, Yeah, that went on fairly smooth. Let's get... I'm actually losing... There we go. I was losing the nostril there. Just to clogging it up with too much paint. Also managed to blob it on this parchment here, so let's just smooth it out. Don't intend to layer it, but just means I won't have any texture. And this gold is going on quicker than I thought it would, so I might have to pick something else to paint before I start slapping on our next shade. Also, I know last stream, well, not last stream, last painting stream. Yeah, it was a little gruesome. There was a fair bit of blood, but the actual damage isn't much. It is just like a little. It was just like a little flap that was just like because it went the cut went along practically parallel to the edge of my finger rather than into my finger. So I got off pretty easy there. But yeah, like I say, last painting stream when I was finishing up that Scorpec Lord, I was musing with the fact of potentially recollecting a small Necron army. I might have accidentally done that. It turns out all I needed was a box of the new warriors, and don't mind this, I'm just touching up some areas I just noticed I missed with this colour. Yeah, I just got a box of the new warriors, combine that with the Scorpec Lord that I painted for that stream, as well as eyeing up the Indomitus sprue for Scorpex on eBay, which are half the price of a normal box, because I've still knocked the camera apparently, because those sprues are everywhere. And then throw in some models I already had, like some older mortals, and I have 500 points, which is small but playable, and is the same size as well, I've got the same amount, at least in terms of Mechanicus, barring a couple of units, which are small, and not knights, and making 500 points out of my Space Marines is easy, because I'm close to 4,000 of the fuckers. So I might just be collecting a bunch of little 500 point armies for the sake of, like, hey, who wants to learn the game? Here's the robots, here's the spacemen. I can remember where I missed an avocado pit with a knife and it went into my hand. Oh, yeah, because that's going to be going down with some force just to get into it so you can twist it off. Yeah. I feel like you guys have been... Well, actually, no. I can see the avocado one with Stumpy being at his workplace as well. It sounds like something that would have happened at the burger place you were at for that little while. Avocado on burger is a thing, as far as I remember. Meanwhile, John with the potato peeler does sound like a home incident. Yeah, the Iandin is actually almost dry. You can see sort of that slight sheen to it, as contrasters want to do. So it is still curing a little bit. So I want to wait a little bit before I start slapping more on. In fact, it is still wet in the edge of this shoulder pad. I might also put a little bit more on the top of his head. A weird anal habit of I like to have a gradient going down this like top mohawk of the helmet. So that means putting on a little bit more than I actually want. Just so when I do come back with the Avaland, I've got stuff to remove. Because that's going to be the third stage for the yellow after we hit it with the next contrast painters with tidying up the yellow. Which used to take ages, but Mr. Wet Palette here helps with that one. Next up, because that is still technically curing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start basing for our silvers, which actually starts off with some Black Templar, because silvers just look better over blacks. So switching to a smaller brush. John with the potato peeler sounds like something from Cluedo. Yeah. Necrons have... Yeah, Necrons do just look really good now. It's like... I mean, you were there for it, Stumpy, when I first started picking up the game, and I picked Necrons. So, you know... Well, I'm sure you absolutely understand my fondness for them. How big is a Scorpec Lord? Thinking of kit bashing? Let me show you, actually, before I start with that. I've got him somewhere down here. Just a moment. I have actually not dropped any frames. That is weird. Got him down here. So, obviously, our veteran here, same size as any other normal Space Marine, at least from the older kits. Let me just angle this so the lighting is a little better. There we go. And then we've got our Skorpek Lord, who is, I believe that's a 60mm base, so he's around about as tall as your normal Dreadnought. Obviously, a fair bit skinnier, but like next to a Space Marine on his 32, you can see the size difference. I mean, maybe not at this angle, but yeah. I mean, you could definitely like do some fun character conversions with that. Also, this actually looks really good on this camera. I feel like I should have gotten this camera ages ago. Oh well, living and learn. Right. Anyway, like I say, getting some of these metallics based. Let's start with the hammer, because I noticed some of the joints where I'd normally put in some of this are still a little wet with the Iandon. So, do. And this is why I love contrast paints. With them being, like, thin, they're just really good for just getting some quick basing down and dirty. I wouldn't really just use them for their intended method of just slap on and there you go. But granted, that also comes from painting Space Marines. I bet these contrast paints would be really good for like Tyranids and demons, or just anything with a lot of like organic shapes and surface detail. But with Space Marines having a lot of flat surfaces for their armor panels, you do get this blotchy look, which you are currently seeing, and I would not call that a finished paint job for myself. Other people might, and that's good for them, but I've been painting for too long, and with enough emphasis on my painting to be very picky about how I represent my work. That's how I'm going to describe it. As you can see, it's already starting to pull away from the edges, so it is... You are getting to see what contrast paints normally would do, alongside of my weird way of using them. Yeah, there's a weird thing with them. They seem to be used for all sorts of things, and their best applications are outside of their intended use. Which, I mean, that's not a criticism. I can see how someone could take it that way, if they did want to use it that way. Also managed to just get a little bit on there with a little bit of a wayward brush stroke. There we go. Just cleaning it up with a damp brush. Doesn't matter if it sort of desaturates that area a little bit, because that area is most definitely going to be hit with our next colour for the yellow, so it will not matter. Can I see? Yes. And I am dropping my tiny brush. It can stay down there. I can't be bothered to bend. And let us get his little Auspex reticule thingy. This little augment. I don't know if it's actually an augment or if it's just like part of his helmet. I couldn't tell you. I just want to make sure it's black because I'm most definitely going to be painting it silver. Ooh, oh. I might have to touch up the gold because I've got the butterfingers. Would you recommend any bipedal legs to attach to his base? Also, love the colour scheme. The colour scheme is actually just Nihilek Dynasty. I just saw it pop up as like, yes, give me the golds and the teals. Give me that nice little warm blue contrast. Any bipedal legs to attach to his base? Like, just to replace his little tripod legs? Because I don't really know if there's anything to his scale. The camera is actually really struggling picking out what to focus on. Yeah, there's not really much to his scale that I am aware of. I've seen a lot of people replace his legs with the platform from the new... I'm getting used to calling them Locust Destroyers, to make a Destroyer Lord, which I'm very tempted to do because I love my Destroyer Lords. Let me just touch up. There we go. That's going to mostly get covered in purple anyway, so it doesn't matter. Outside of that, I'm not sure. Because he is quite a bit larger than most other Necrons. Like his torso could probably fit a warrior inside of it. Again, just getting used to the new camera, and let us get. I don't know how well this is showing up. Just getting the inside of these elbow joints. There we go. Also managing to get some little black spots on his arm. It doesn't matter, I'll clean it up. You should replace his legs with arms. I'm surprised it's not some horror where there's like, oh, his arms are legs and his legs are arms, and he walks weird to freak you out. Oh, you should show Jordan that, oh, stop even, the red Necron that you made when I talked about my original Necrons from yonks ago. That is definitely a classic piece of art. Right, so that's almost done actually. There's a little bit on his wrist, on the shield. In terms of our little casing fibers. So let me just sploosh. It is still drying down in there, so I gotta be a little careful. Just a little. There we go. And I'll probably get the actual handle later because, like I say, it is still drying down there. Where to next? I might actually just touch up the white field on his shoulder pad whilst I'm waiting still. Just to get that out of the way and to make that look a little less messy. What was that? And his arms with legs. Disconnected, please wait while we try to reconnect you. That's probably you two playing up. I'm not dropping any frames as far as I can tell. Then we'll just check something. Hey, successful. I don't know if that messed with the stream then, but the chat said I was disconnected. I don't know what to trust of YouTube. It certainly didn't tell me I had dropped any frames. Yeah, place arms of legs and legs of arms. Yeah, that sounds like something actually some Necrons would do. Just because they kind of gone a little loopy. There we go. I don't like how chalky this texture is coming out on his shoulder pad, but hopefully the Apothecary White I am going to apply later is going to fix that. And let us rebase that knee pad. Should have probably done this after, but I wanted something to do while I waited for his base yellow to dry. Because honestly, I thought the paints would be drying faster today. I was clearly wrong. Disconnected. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, this new part seems to have some little bits in it. Let's make sure all these brush strokes are in the same direction just to make it less splotchy and easier to top up. So that'll take a little while. What next? What next? What next? Might grab the Wraith Bone to start basing some of the parchment. Yeah, let's do that. There we go. Like I say, I'm just waiting for this contrast to dry properly, or at least so to the point where I can confidently start putting other things on top of it. And we start getting to the fun bit. And we are currently about an hour in. Probably will go. Normally it would be 9:30, but I might go to 10. I'm not sure. Let's get this little head parchment. Because he's got a little parchment reef thing on his forehead for some reason. Granted, I have lost a little bit of the detail from the contrast paint being a little thick, but you can paint detail back on. I got sweat coming down my face. Okay, tell you what. I'm going to get this parchment stuff based, and I'm going to have to grab a drink. And also rubbing off some of the black off of his hammer, which Actually, that's not the end of the world, because that's pretty much almost dry. Let's get this on his shield, which is already white, so that should be fairly quick, except for the bits that I had to touch up with gold, just because of some of that little fuck up. There we go. And at least this stream, I've got no one popping up to show me the shiny, what was it? Was it a Celebi? Was that what that? I presume it was a kid. That was a bit weird, but that's the risk of playing a popular game on the internet. Anyone could show up. Let's just keep the brush a little damp too. Shrug. Yeah. I could probably go back to the VOD and find out, but honestly, it's bad enough watching back some of my streams just to see how they looked in the end. Turns out when I dropped frames, YouTube just skips that bit entirely. It doesn't show that it like glitches or stops or anything like on Twitch. It just skips the frames that it's dropped entirely. Have you read The Infinite and the Divine? I've wanted to actually, because I've heard quite a good few things about that one, just because of like how the characters play off each other. So that's definitely. I don't read a lot of 40k books, but that's definitely one I want to. I swear there's like one of them makes a comment of like having a fight with each other. One of them makes a joke along the lines of, "Hey, imagine if you didn't, if we didn't set these wheels in motion, we'd just be two old men fighting with our canes instead of super ancient death robots." It's like, yeah, that'd be weird. I do like that the gave Arakan a little bit of a spotlight. He's such an odd character that you never consider to use him in game, but Drazine's always been a bit of a shitlord, so everyone loves him. There's a little bit of yellow still drying in that crevice, so just gotta be careful. I think Arakan's rules are neat, I would say. It's like, yes, your dice roll has now determined that the stars are aligned, and I am going to fucking Hulk out now, thank you. I am gone from frail old astronomer to just death robot out of nowhere, just because it has been prophesized. There we go. That's the Wraith Bone drying on there. There is a little bit of parchment on his shoulder pad, so let us swap back to a smaller brush and see if we can't get that. And granted, again, this is probably one I'm going to have to touch up because it is right next to where it is going to be a little messy with the contrast. But fuck it. If I get it based, I won't forget. I will see that it's messy and like I want to fix that and not have it hidden underneath all the colours and just forget to paint it. Also, my internet just seems to be behaving today. Usually by this point I'd be annoyed at some random kilobyte drops. But right now, no dropped frames, despite the fact I'm at 1080p rather than 720. So, who knows? Maybe everyone else's computer's exploded and mine's the only one on the street that's currently connected to the internet. This heat would do that, and my 5-year-old Lappy has been slightly resilient. There we go, there we go. I keep forgetting how to brace my hand. That's probably not showing the best on. There's too much in the way for me to properly show that. But I will at least. This will need a second coat, but we'll save that second coat for when it needs tidying. So it can look a little patchy for now. And then this is some dangling bits of parchment down here. Just framing this blood drop. There we go. Well, that's good enough. That's good enough just for it to be blocked out so I don't forget about it. So, like I say, I am just going to very quickly get something to drink, so I've got something to sip while we stream. So I shall be just a moment. Alright, that is a million times better. Let me just get that out of shot, actually. mm. Just something that's been in the refrigerator for ages, and throw in some ice cubes, and suddenly this gets a lot more bearable. Okay, right. Where was I? Yes, touched up the parchment. Our black contrast is actually almost dried. Sippy. Yes, I take a bigger to sip. Big sippy. Big SIP. And whatever there is in the freezer at the bottom of the ice trays has made my hand a tiny bit sticky. Just a moment. It's going to be a caveman and use some of my paint water to rinse my hand a little bit. There we go. Right, so let us peruse our yellow again. It looks like it has pretty much dried, so let's make it wet again. This time, I am breaking out the dark oak flesh, which is meant to be a skin tone, but I use it to shade my yellow. I'm gonna need a mid-sized brush that is relatively neat. You'll do. Let me just get rid of some of those stray hairs. The joys of using synthetic brushes, I don't mind just cutting off some of them stray fibres. There we go. So yeah, dark oak, it's going to be very much like how it was with IA Anden. But I'm just going to be putting it on some of the darker areas of the model. So definitely, let's move that from underneath my hand. Definitely the back of the pelvis here and the back of the legs. As you can see, this one is, I almost want to say it's a bit more of an oily colour. But as you can see, as it goes over our yellow, it does add a sort of a weird brown tint. So back of the legs, make sure we get it on the inside of the legs too, because they are going to be really dark. And maybe creep it in over the shin a little bit. Definitely, I'll just cover the whole foot with it. Definitely. And again, this is still going to look a little patchy by the time I'm done with it. But, like I say, it's going to get some cleaning up with some of the fin down Avaland. This is just how I sort of accentuate some of the volumes. Bottom of the pelvis, inside of the thigh. And already you can see the difference between our legs and everything else. It does look quite dark, especially on camera, but we will fix that. Definitely need to just hit the entire of the back of the shield. And just everything back there. Because that is going to be pretty damn dark behind our board. There we go. Probably just going to hit the entirety of that forearm behind the shield too. It's like this paint seems to be a little thinner, at least in terms of like how the colour applies, than some of the other contrast paints. So you can slap it over a surface and still see a fair bit of the colour. It just sort of adds a bit of a brown to the surface, and it does push the value downwards a little bit. Probably the bottom half of our backpack, as well as under here. Make sure we accentuate those bolts. Bottom half of our vents, just to get that volume, because these are spheres. So we've got to make the bottom half dark. And make sure we leave at least the top half bright, so then we can make the top quarter the bright yellow. Or lightest yellow, and maybe a dot of what's going to be our highlight colour once that time comes. In between the vent and the roll, every bit of the roll that's behind the head. Like I say, I'd kind of just slap this on haphazardly, and that it's weird. It does sort of make a bit of an orange tone. It's especially accentuating that on camera. But that's partially what I like. And it's weird as well. If you compare this to our example down here, Lamenters are usually done in a bit, I want to call it like an icier yellow. Like it's paler, like it's less saturated and it's lighter. And that is probably like where I deviate the most in terms of my colour. Because I don't like the majority of a model being that sort of pale and desaturated without it being actually white. Like, it makes sense for something like a white scar, you know, white armor, it's going to be like that. But any other colour, like almost virgin garnet pastel, or whatever, it just looks a bit odd to me. I am just going to tap this shoulder pad just to muzzy up that surface, that edge even. I want this a little patchy, I want this a little messy looking. These guys are Lamenters. They are one of the few Space Marine chapters that are known to get their butts kicked. I want them not clean. Let's get around that cuff, just to accentuate that edge. And then the helmet, so bottom half of the face. Not too much like that though. Let's just get the back quarter of his head. I managed to get some on the white field too, and that's almost dry. Oh, wonderful. Make sure I get there in between the eyes and in the mouthpiece. Just around the mohawk. And then a lot back here. Right down in this crevice. Let's make sure I get the... Oh, I've already got the back of his collar. And that is that. For the most part. Upside to shading like this is the stages get quicker and quicker because you're using less and less paint. You're having to think more. But it is less paint per layer. Let's get that armpit. And just the bottom of the collar. There we go. Like I say, that has made him quite dark. It looks even darker on camera, I won't lie. The colours seem to be being pushed to an extreme. I also managed to get some in here. So let me just wash that off. Get a big brush. There we go. Yeah, for some reason the contrast is just being really pushed on this camera. Let me see if I can't adjust that for us at home. C922. Updating. Okay, color. What is this one? Alpha. No, I want that up. Contrast. No, let's put that. Let's keep that at 0. Saturation. Oh no, that's color shifting. Oh, that one's saturation. Maybe. Oh, no, that's overexposure is what that one looks like. It might just be my lighting more than anything then. Let me make this less ugly. I'm not sure what to do for that. I mean, that's pretty close, but it also really overexposes us. Oh well. We're here for the stream, not for accuracy. Also doesn't help that it is starting to get dark-ish. The sun is setting. I'll just grab another sip. And as you can see, just because we used that much less paint on the model, a lot of it is already starting to dry too. So we might be able to do the bulk of his armor tonight and leave the details for another stream. We'll see. While we are waiting for that to dry though, let's get on with the rest of our metallics. So we've done the gold. I might just touch up a bit of the gold, because I can see some bits that got hit by stuff it shouldn't have. Mostly on that backpack part. The shield's actually fine, as is that bit. So let us get our silvers on here. That might overall bring the tone upwards a little bit too. So, going with the classic lead belcher. Then we're going to start with a big brush and work on the hammer, and then move over to the little brush for our little mechanical details. So let's put a blob on there. There we go. Just want to make sure I don't have too much on the brush. So yeah, the hammer, literally the easiest bit in terms of silver, because it is one big old metal lump used for smashing skulls. And thank you, discovering that I can use metallics with wet palettes. It helps ensure that my metallics are now a lot smoother than they used to be. So as well, over the past, over the little break that I had, the week, 2 weeks, whatever it ended up being since the Pokemon stream, I have been thinking about other projects I can do in the long term. Especially in regards to, like, the tiny armies that I mentioned. Because the Necrons, relatively easy to paint. I mean, sure it took me a bit to do this guy, but he's a character. I'm just going to leave him off to the side for reference. But 3 Scorpack Destroyers, 10 Warriors, 5 Immortals, and 3 Scarabs. That could be a stream, like a longer stream, if I ever book some time off of work. But it could be a marathon of, hey, I'm going to paint a bunch of dudes. One come watch. So that could be something. In terms of the other armies, Red Corsairs, if when Chaos do get their update, because they make perfect counterpoints for Lamenters due to their history. They might be a little more complicated. Harlequins definitely would be a bit too complicated for doing anything outside of just a couple characters, maybe. Let us get this eyepiece. upside of also with basing metallics with the black. If I do miss an edge, it just works as a bit of an edge color, like for separating. There we go. Let's get the top of that eyepiece. That's looking a little better. What else is going to be silver over than his joints, which are going to be a pain in the butt to reach, well, at least with this brush. Oh yeah, I have the handle and some of the gubbins for the storm shield. Like that's so far with the tiny armies. My aim is 500 points, but that's Like I say, surprisingly, it does not give you as much to play with as I thought it would with some armies. So I might see if I can't push it up to 1,000 for a few of the ones that I want to specialize or have a little more of. Like especially those armies that are very low model count, which could be Necrons, because I do like the idea of going a bit of a destroyer cult theme. Just a load of crazy ancient robots that just are out for murder. Also partially just because I think one of the rules that all the destroyers share is called hardwired for destruction, which in my brain goes, hey, that could be a cool band name. You know, it's almost on par with Hunters from Hyperspace, which is another Necron rule, which there's badass names for things in almost like over the top comical sense, but it's also genuinely like, that's so stupid that I kind of have to love it. That could be like the name of a faction, and it's just a rule that just says you like to kill. Which is weird, because usually when it comes to games nowadays, at least video, I've been preferring a lot of the non-violent things. Like there was a point-and-click adventure game I played last night. I was originally thinking I could stream it, but I was just in a weird diz of I just need something new. I need something new. My brain is bored. I need the stimulation of it's a point-and-click adventure game called Strangeland, and I think it's one of those games where there is some replay value in that you can see and do different things, but it was only a 4-hour game, and I accidentally did it in one sitting. But it was like it was good. It was sort of a mix of. This is me showing probably some of the weirder things I've seen in terms of like point-and-click adventures games. But if you've ever heard of a game called Darkseed, which was this really weird point-and-click adventure game with a lot of like custom art from H.R. Geiger, where it's sort of like visually it's similar to that, just less real world and more of like a dreamscape, and fully voiced as well, which is really nice. You can get games without violence. Yeah, no, I know, it's crazy. But like that was just really nice. That was a fun experience. I might actually try and play some more point and click adventure games, because we still get them now, even nowadays. And just because of how they are mechanically, they do tend to be a little less violent. It's not that like I dislike violence, it's just like, you know, most games are so centered around violence, a lot of them just start feeling the same. Custodies could be another good one for, yeah, a low point army. I don't exactly mind painting gold. I say, as my old Necrons used to be entirely gold and black. But yeah, Custodies could be a good one. I mean, I know there was a lot of hubbub at the beginning of our first lockdown, because I think it's Henry Cavill plays Superman and Geralt in The Witcher. Basically, like showed a picture on Instagram. I was like, "Hey, I'm painting up some Warhammer guys," and it was a Custodies. He even referenced the Blackstone Fortress in an interview for the next season of The Witcher, because apparently, I say apparently, I saw it and I agree. One of the chandeliers on one of the sets looks a lot like one. So, thank you to Pixels for showing me that one. It just turns out that he's just a big old chill nerd that just happens to look the way he does. Because let us be honest, he is not a bad looking guy. Yeah, so I got the silvers based. A little messy, but look at this entire model. How dry are we in terms of this? Still a little wet in some places, but I think we can start working on tidying up this guy. Currently an hour and 25 in. So, back to our Avaland. Gonna just blop on some more. It's a fair bit, because we want to make sure it stays wet. Okay, I want to make sure it is actually thin. So I don't want to just be blocking it on. I want to actually be creating a little bit of a gradient. And like I say, I'm just going to start with the mohawk. That always seems to be just my place to start with this stage. So just running along the edge, and it's a little too much on my brush. And getting this forward bit. This might be a bit too thick. Well, it needs thinning probably. Let's add a little bit more water to it. Not a huge amount, just enough so that we're not making completely opaque layers. I can see my XSplit twitching. Oh, it's because I'm hovering over something accidentally. Hold on, there we go. There we go. Then on his face, I'm just going to catch the top. I almost want to call it the top of his nose, but it's this little mouthpiece that leads up to like the brow of his helmet, and get a little bit under his eye lens. There we go. Get a little bit of... This still needs watering down. I don't know if it's the weather causing this. I just need my yellow a little thinner. I might also hit some areas again with the Iandin just to help preserve that mid-tone. There we go, that is a little better. So you didn't see it, I'm just hitting the front of his helmet. And let us help get rid of that little dark patch that we got on the side of his head. There we go, it's a little more natural looking for me. And there's all these little doodads, it's going to get a little bit of a highlight. Yeah, let's get this little bit here. Granted, that's mostly going to get covered up by his rank markings when I get around to those. But yeah, this is basically kind of like a thick edge highlight that I like to do. It just brings back the yellow in a bit more. Accentuates the contrast a bit more by having a bit more of our second lightest colour showing up. It looks worse on camera than it does in front of me. I don't know why that is. Well, we'll see. He mostly needs to look good from this angle, so that's what's important. In fact, on his cheek, just going to bring the yellow a little further down. See if I can't get some Iandin on there to add a little bit more volume. Just catch the top of our collar. Oh, of course. You know, I probably should have waited to do the white last, in the amount of having to clean up. And then just the top of what's going to be the pectorals. It's a little bit of a messy line. I need to start the line also on this side, just to help have that line end a little less starkly. Bring it there. Much better. Top of the thigh. It's gonna just accentuate some of the panel lining on here. So that ends there. That goes around there. Make sure we cut that dot too. I'm gonna leave a good bit of that dark just because of the parchment flowing over it. The shin, I'm gonna do what I usually do of just getting a center line of our ianded here, just to sort of like make it emphasize that it's a cylinder, and then feather those edges a little bit. I don't know how well some of this is showing up on camera. This stage does have me sort of the model fly around usually at all sorts of angles. There we go, but that is starting to solidify. There's the shape we want. If it was in focus, there we go. And then just needs to do the same on this side. So catch that edge. Add a little bit more water because it is starting to dry out a little bit on my brush. Feather the edge on this side. Just making sure I end my brush stroke where I want the paint to be strongest. And getting this edge underneath this little box detail, whatever that is, just to make sure it's visible. There we go. And just hit some of the paint neat in the center too, just to make sure there's a solid splash of it. As I drop the brush out of my mouth, then top of the foot, toe of the foot, just in the same area that lines up with the stuff we've already done on the leg. That could be feathered a bit more. That just looks like a straight line on that leg. Pardon me. So let us make sure that's actually feathering a little bit. We'll probably overextend the yellow a little bit again, just so we can hit it with some of the iandin. This is like an extra little bit of modulation. Don't even know if that's the right word, it just sounded right. And so far, so messy looking. They do look a lot better once I do get the edge highlighting in. That really neatens things up. Let's get a little bit of the crotch just to accentuate it, just to make sure people know it's there. Get the edge of where the thigh meets. And get some of that watered down one just to, again, to feather it out. Hit the belt a little bit. It is a bit weird as well, because like a large part of my my army has gone Primaris, as I'm sure a lot of Space Marine armies have. But here I am, painting my my little firstborn OG recipe Space Marine. But hey, I could always bring out the blade guard I did a few weeks ago for comparison. And to be fair, like in terms of lore, it makes sense for the Lamenters at least to have a large portion of Primaris, because the amount of times the chapter's been brought to close to just being completely wiped out, makes sense that they would jump at the chance to recruit a bunch of the new boys as soon as they started coming off the production line. Just getting some of the vent bits or whatever this. I would like to know what some of these details are on the leg. A lot of Space Marine legs do just share some of these line designs, but it's never really clear what they are. Just feather a little bit up the thigh. Let's actually get some of the water that's coming in off of our sponge to help feather that a little bit. And let's just work on this leg. Don't want too much yellow on this because this is the leg that is directly behind the shield, though I just had way too much applied there. There we go. Just enough where we do emphasize that edge. Plop a little bit on his toe here. Just, again, to emphasize it. Basically edge highlights some bits, because they're not going to be too bright, all things considered. I don't know how well, again, that was showing up. Come on, focus. There we go. That's where we're at so far. Again, not looking amazing, but there's still a fair bit on the tidying up stage to do. Right. Yeah, just overextend the yellow just a tiny bit, just so the eye ending has something to play off of when we reapply some of that. Yeah, just hit underneath. I don't think I hit a good portion of his shin with the dark oak. It looks a little too light. Then back of his legs, I am just basically going to edge highlight this with the base yellow. Doesn't matter if the edge or the lines go off weird places like I just did there, but whatever. Yeah, just basically edge highlight some of this. Let's the back of the model stay a bit dirty and grungy looking, which I kind of like. Edge there. This is probably the least interesting part because it's sort of setting up and making the model look good without actually making the model look all that good. Edge, top of the can of this thigh. A little bit around this detail here. A little bit around this detail here. That's most of the back of the legs done, because that's most of what I do with him. Let's just get a little bit on the backpack done, because that probably is the area of the model that gets the least attention overall, so I might as well get it out of the way. Don't go too crazy on this usually, just enough to emphasize some of the shapes. Like I say, this is a bit of the boring part. How's everyone doing anyway? It's been a weird couple of weeks, especially for those that pay attention to the football. I say as John probably starts crying into his hands. There we go, looks fine from the front. Yeah, that's starting to come together now as more and more of the models got in it. On one area it just looked really weird, but now it's starting to look a bit more cohesive. Let's hit some bits of the shield. Just emphasize the top of the shield, because that's where the light's going to be catching. A little bit of the side here too. Show off some of the volumes again. It's all the same theory. It's all the same weird practice. Ooh, yeah, it's looking a bit bold. That's better. Start hitting some of the trim, just to emphasize that the different layers. I love how you can do yellow and not make it look gaudy and cartoonish. It is weird as a colour. Because, I don't know, I feel like it does make it look a little cartoonish. But it's a combination of I've gone for To be honest, it's been the strangest 2 weeks of my life. Yeah, because someone's had a progeny. Yeah, in terms of the yellow, it does come down to sort of like, with it being such a light color, you kind of have to embrace that it would show off a lot of different tones. Like a lot of the times you see yellow, it's solid yellow with really dark shading, and that does make it look cartoony just because you got such a bright color with those edges. But I wanted to try and I wanted to make these guys look a little messy, like I say, and two, I wanted to sort of like move away from that because that keeping that looking clean is really difficult. But also just like I wanted tones. Tones just help make it look a bit more real. Sad fact, the Lamenters were overjoyed about the fact that Primaris support had no traces of the Black Rage, then it surfaced in completely fresh recruits. Yeah, I am totally not leaning back and looking at some of my Death Company intercessors. It's like, I think that was the original point of the Lamenters. It's just like, oh, they tinkered with the gene seed. Pardon me. And to try and sort of minimize chances of the Black Rage, and it worked for about a century. And then they all got hit with, well, then the chapter got hit by a century's worth of Black Rage all at once. It's like, oh shit, it only worked a little while, and now it's here again. Oh boy. And that was the first of many, many things that fucked over the chapter. Yeah, good to know it has been good for you though. It's I think everyone's just sort of felt a little bit, even as things have been moving back towards the norm. It's still hard not to feel a little isolated, even now. Yeah, we're hitting that point where I am starting to see where I'm going to need to tidy this up a little more. Just to keep those volumes. Yeah, especially on this shoulder pad trim, I overdid it, but let's just hit that anklet, elbowlet, I suppose. Get some of the detail in focus for starters. Come on. Do I have to do this again, camera? Come on. How do I kill autofocus? God damn it. This is what I end up fighting with no matter what, is this damn autofocus. Thank you. Want the viewers at home to actually still be able to see what the hell it is I'm doing. Looks at Imperial Fist. Yeah, no, the Imperial Fists do get that quite a bit. In terms of just like really bright yellow with pretty stark shading. I don't know. It's a thing with yellow in any like high value color that, you know, the less you do of it, the more obvious it is. I'd love to see a cel-shaded marine paint job. Yeah, honestly. Just seeing people experiment with styles in general is nice. I did see someone who had gotten like, it wasn't a Ninja Turtle, but it was like, you know, it was a big turtle man monster eating a pizza. What else is it? And they'd done like a cel-shaded style on that. This is the problem sometimes with trying to do vents, it just ends up going in the vent, but we'll fix that. And instead of edge highlighting, they'd basically hit it with like a black instead, and that honestly did look really good. It looks good. It's when it's intentional, when you're intentionally trying to make it look cartoony. If you're not doing it on purpose and it's obvious, that's when it's like someone didn't know what they were doing, but learning is a process, I suppose. I don't want to be too negative. painting ain't easy. There's a lot to consider. It's not always you're not always able to consider everything. And to be fair, a lot of people will probably see what I'm doing here and balk. It's like, what the hell are you doing, mate? It's like, it's on purpose. It will look good by the time it's done. Or at least it'll look satisfactory for me. Yeah, let's get those individual fingies. Let's see if I can't get them on this side too. Probably not. No, I'm already fucking up the thumb. Let's do that. I think we have redone most of our Avaland now. Other than some obvious bits. Let's actually miss some of the bits in the darkest areas. Just to make sure it doesn't look like a soupy mess. There we go. Right. Which means it is back to the Ianden. It's also another sip of my drink. The ice melted quite a while ago. But it is leaving a lot of condensation on my desk, which I'm not against. Woo. Don't know if my... there we go. I want to make sure my voice was actually coming through still. So what basically I'm doing is I'm going back to the first gloopy colour that I used, which is the Ianden, and just helping bridge the gap in a few places, because it is looking a little too blocky. Which means not having much on the brush, and instead of doing brush strokes, just tapping around the edge, making sure to end our brush strokes in the darkest areas. And that is going to go a long way to again add more tones and hide some of the sloppiness, because this is how I paint most of my army. Well, I do some variation of this on most of my army, and I want it to be feasible to actually paint my army. Granted, there's a large chunk of my army that is unpainted, but that is something I slowly wish to remedy, especially now that we're not getting a huge amount of Space Marine updates now that we've got an Indomitus out of the way. Hooray for every other army out there, if you know what I mean. I mean, the new Orcs look sweet. Almost considered getting a Beast Snagger box, but it's not how I would play Orcs myself personally. It's not my style. I like things that go fast and hit hard. I just like the race cars and the motorbikes instead of big pigs. But still, they look sweet as hell. Very nice sculpts. Nice to see boys, like some of the core troops, getting some updates. Send your thoughts and prayers for every Eldar player as they look at their guardians. Yeah, they do come out a lot better with that little bit of extra attention. Really gets the look popping. Especially once I do get the edge highlights. It's weird, sort of like having that little bit of solid paint really helps push the gradients a little bit more. Like, but just as an edge highlight. But this has, yeah, I keep forgetting how quick this step really fixes these gradient issues. Just gotta use transparent paint, mate. You want easy gradients. You just don't use the photo bucket tool. I mean the fill bucket tool, whatever. Yeah, no, that's already looking a million times better. Thank you, paint lords. Let's get this bottom corner too, just to make that look a bit better. There we go. Let's have this creep up here a little bit too. There's a little bit down here I've missed, isn't there? Yeah. Just re-emphasize where the collar meets the torso. Yeah, there we go. That's already looking a bit better. A little less messy. Look a lot less messy once we block in the other details and get the edge highlighting. You should try oil painting on canvases. It's tempting. To be fair, using oil paints on minis has become a little bit of a fad at the moment, which is why that's sort of like the weird transfer of like, oh hey, people are using oil paints on minis. How else do people use oil paints again? Oh yeah, actual paintings. I just I seem to struggle with creating those sort of volumes and shapes rather than just emphasizing pre-existing ones though. Like it has been a long time since I've drawn like properly. I should probably get back into it because I really did enjoy it. It is, as with a lot of ours, introduction into art in general. With some, it's still going on. Like I know where Stumpy and John are still very much at it where they can. And I do have ideas. It's just executing on them where I seem to struggle. There we go. That's a bit better looking on that shoulder pad. Right, so what do we do next? What do we do next? Ooh, there is a little bit of the dark over to fix, as I noticed on the other leg. To be honest, half the time, like, painting of oils does sound tempting, just because I like the texture. I seem to just really like texture in art. As odd as that might sound. Which is why I like this sort of inky, blotchy look on my marines. But also just like, you can get like an actual physical, like, texture in oil paints that I really like. It's a whole other part of the medium you can play with to get your points across, whatever they are. Which I think is just very useful. Let's just reline the abs. Problem is some of the eye ending does get over the dark over, it does sort of soften it a little too much, so you got to go back and reapply in some places. But that's not the end of the world. In fact, it's pretty much already done in this case. Even just touching it to some of these details just brings out the lines that little bit more. I also noticed that half of that wasn't on camera, but oh well. Come on, refocus for me. You can do it. Come on. Thank you. Right. Now we got that out of the way. And after sounding like Mr. Krabs for a little moment there, got another half hour that I'm willing to go for. Just to make up for that late start and technical hiccups. So, I do notice that I've got the collar a little too dark. So let me just tap along this edge. There we go, just to bring it back in. Let's block in the abs. Screw it. Let's go straight for it. I'll leave edge highlighting and the livery for last, just because those take ages, and if I start them now, this stream will end up being 5 hours, and I don't want to do that. I'm in work tomorrow. Yeah, same. Yeah, no, I can feel that one. So, I am going to start with the abs. Going to start off with a Galvorback red, which is sort of a purpley burgundy colour. I think I can see what the issue is in terms of the lighting, actually. I think we're getting a fair bit of blue coming in from outside. Oh yeah, that already looks better. And now it's messing with our white balance. Still getting a bit of blue. Oh well. But that is going to be our base coat for the abs. I'm going to make them look more like muscle, because they've got that sort of ridged texture to them. It is actually emphasized a bit with all these other colours on it. Plus, we get a purpley colour right next to yellow, which, if we know our colour theory, is a good one. Now the issue with this red is that it is a little transparent to begin with, and I have a very wet palette right now. Like, overcompensating red. Also, autofocus is my enemy. Come on. There we go. No. Yes. So probably we'll need a couple layers. Let's just hit these abs. I also noticed that on the parchment we've managed to get all sorts of little splotches on it from other colours, but we could probably work with that. There is also a skull where his belly button should be, but I feel like, I don't know, I might just leave that as is instead of trying to paint it as a skull. There we go, that second layer. Really solidifying the colour in. There we go. Kind of looks a little gory, but that's the point. And then there's a couple other bits to block in. Tell you what, I'll start with our lenses. Grab a little bit of the Wraith Bone that is actually still wet on the palette, but we need a little bit more. There we go. So lenses would be the eye that we have here, which is always a nightmare to try and stay still for. I think I already managed. The shape's a little funky, but whatever. And I actually managed to get some yellow on the metal for our eyepiece. So give me a moment whilst I fix that. Ooh, this is watered down a fair bit too. But there we go. Let's actually get some in that mouth grill too. There we go. We'll give that a little moment to dry. See if we can't touch up the white on that knee pad, because I didn't do a full layer on there on purpose, just to save a little bit of energy for fixing it, which is what I am doing right now. There we go. Yeah, that looks a bit more solid. Let's see if we can't fix up the field on the shoulder pad. I also noticed I managed to somehow bloody get some of the red on the edge of this shoulder pad. Oh my god. This is what happens. I've not been painting a lot in my spare time recently, and it is really messing up with my brush control. Hopefully. I don't know. I want the time to practice, but I also spend a lot of time when I'm not at work just recuperating. So just a lot of painting just doesn't get done. At least nowhere near as much as I A used to and B would like to, which is a little upsetting. Focus. Focus. Come on, even shouting at it isn't working this time. I'm going to have to see what I can do with the settings for cameras, because I am despising autofocus right now. Like, you are my worst enemy in terms of being a watchable stream. There we go. I just seem to have to remind it what to look at every now and again. Also, hearing my neighbours and some odd noises. There just seems to be this country in general. Wow, this is really thinned up. Let's just use it neat. I don't care at this point. We're hitting that point where I just want the colours blocked on this damn shield. the top of that edge. There we go, there we go, there we go. That's just what I needed to do. Just do the cardinal sin of not fitting the paint. Duncan would be rolling in his grave if it weren't for the fact that he was still alive, starting his own bloody paint range. There we go, and then just cover the govel back with some of the neat yellow. Let's just feather that edge there a little bit. And use some of the neat paint just to cover up that blob and add a little bit of a sheen to that area, hey? Yeah, and you know what? There's the Blood Angel wings in the middle of his chest that I forgot to do. Let's see if we can't get them based. Tiny details. I'm going to hold my breath a little bit. Stuff like this is hard. Stuff like this is hard. But if I want fancy looking spaceman, that's what we gotta do. There we go. On one wing. It's a little messy, but you can't tell from this angle, almost. Also, my hands are getting sweaty. I don't like being sweaty. Does anyone like being sweaty? There we go. Basically overbrush it just to make sure I hit it, and I can clean up the Galvor back. There we go. God, I hate having to do stuff like that. Just holding my breath and hoping. And just get a little bit down in between those two feathers there. Just because that is meant to be red, not white. Camera. It is probably just because of like the small scale that it's struggling with the focus. They're not really designed for this, are they? Oh, there we go, that worked. Don't know what I did, but it worked. Okay. We have gotten a good chunk of stuff done. So I think let's make this the last stage for tonight. Just so I don't have to think about the white anymore, I'm going to get the shading on it done. Which is going to be the apothecary white colour. Just like the other coloured goops that I have used on the yellow, this is similar to that. It's less transparent, it's more of a milky cloudiness, and it's more of a bluish grey rather than the yellow tones that we've been using so far tonight, as you will see in just a moment. So, you can see the colour, it's as it is on my brush, and then if I just plop it onto our white field, it is going to add a little bit of tone. Adding a little bit of a cold colour as well to the white really helps it pop out against the yellow. Ooh, a bit too much on my brush there. Put some of that on the handle. Yeah, let's just touch it to the white on the shield. Probably the closest you'll ever get to a whitewash. And deposit some of this around the bottom. It's a little bit uneven, but it will slowly move as it's a slow drying colour. And then just hit the shoulder pad. Ooh, that's a bit too much, so let's just make sure we cover the whole thing. And then wash it off. Pick up some of the excess from the top. And that's really going to help show off the volume. And then, not entirely, but I am going to touch it a little bit to these wings, just so we have some extra colours to work with. In fact, I might need a little bit more than that. Yeah, I'll do. Okay. Yeah, that's done a lot to help the white, make it look a little less flat. Just overall. Yeah. Okay. Tell you what, while we're doing this, let's rapid fire some of the other areas that I know I'm going to do contrast on. So, the parchment and bone. Ooh, in fact, I need to fix up the parchment on his hip. That's one thing I need to do. But I can leave some of that texture popping through if I don't get some of it on areas around. Just to help give it its own little bit of texture. And then whilst that's drying, we can hit the other areas that we want parchment colours with Skeleton Horde. I'm going to use a smaller brush for this one, just because it's generally smaller areas with some linear grains on it instead of just being a round surface. So just hitting the parchment on the shield with it. As we go, as we go. And that really just helps add that sort of dry, almost like dry tea look to it all. I know I said this would probably need another coat, but I think we might get away with that. Oh yeah, we'll get away with that. When we're using contrast, we don't really need to worry too much about the bottom layer being absolutely perfect. We need it to be good enough. We need it to carry that colour. It doesn't matter if this overspills a little onto the yellow, because that'll just add a little bit more tone. And then we can highlight that with the Wraith Bone again. Let's actually pop some of this in the vents that I managed to accidentally fill with yellow. There we go. Then, well, I think that's still drying a little bit, so we'll hit the parchment on his forehead. Accidentally got some in his eye, but that's not a huge deal. Also forgot to get the lenses on the eye augment, but whatever. There we go. Got that back out of his eye. As long as you're quick to move, you can get most of these fixed without having to be incredibly careful. Let's actually hit this page on his belt. I don't know why he's got a parchment page on his belt. Just adds a nice bit of motion to the model, especially considering the pose that I put him in. Add some to the underside, just because I've got a fair bit too much on this surface. Pick up some more of the excess. And there we go. I'll say we've still got a little bit too much in that little corner there. There we go. Alright. We're getting there. Considering where we usually are at with other models on these streams, it's not too bad. Let me just bring in some more even lighting. That isn't going to overexpose us, eh? There we go. I think for today, I know I wanted to go a little bit longer just to compensate, but I think we're at a good place to stop. That other light isn't actually doing a huge amount just because of where the camera is. There we go. Yeah. So, well, actually, we could probably get this done in just one other stream. I've probably painted way too many of these marines to not be able to do it quickly. Though I am noticing in his mouth grill, I do just need to push a little bit further up in here. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That looks a little less messy in the bad way. In the unintentional way. Yeah. You know, I think we're at a good spot. In fact, no. Eye lenses. Dot. Dot, dot. There we go. Hold on. I didn't get the bottom off of this big one. Better. Right, nitpicking aside. I think this guy is in a good place for now. So we went over a little bit, not quite as much as I originally intended, but we got a little bit used to the new setup. Let's introduce a bit of a warm light to help balance all this cold. Oh yeah, no, that's spot on. That's spot on for the colours actually. So I still need to experiment with my lighting. But hey, if these streams aren't anything, it's me constantly figuring shit out. So, thank you all for joining me so far, especially for Stompy for being able to join us for this evening. Hopefully, with the way things are, I'll be able to keep this carrying on, being at least semi-regular. Judging by my schedule for next week, I want to say Saturday I should be able to stream next. It'll depend on how I feel, of course, but the next most likely stream is going to be Saturday, is what I'm going to say. But again, thank you all for joining me. It has again been a continued experiment in what the hell I'm doing, because I don't know. But we've got a little bit of an insight to how I do my regular army, which I believe is what most people are going to be familiar with me painting rather than random shit. So, thank you all, and